In this week's episode of Studio Inter, we'll be reviewing the Derby della Madonnina with ESPN's Janusz Michallik. We'll be previewing the match against Genoa. We'll be discussing the renaissance of Handanovic, Perisic and Eriksen, this week's Moggi, Moratti and Frog, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter, only on SempreInter.com. Benvenuti, bentornati to another edition of Studio Inter. I'm your host Nima Tavallaey, who, like most Inter fans, is walking on clouds after an absolutely fantastic Derby della Madonnina performance by Antonio Conte's men. But before we get into all of that, let me introduce my panelists, starting with the SempreInter.com's own preview writer, Mr. In-House Positivity, Mr. Mohamed Nasser.
I take it my services will not be required today.
I think
me.
You peaked.
Good night, everyone.
Exactly. He resigns. We're also joined by SempreInter.com's own chief news editor, Mr. William Beckman.
Hello. I think last week I said that Mo could try and be Conte and tell everyone to get off his bandwagon. I think this week maybe his celebration should be "Sono il migliore, cazzo, te l'ho detto," alla Lukaku. He'd be entitled.
The original Mr. Positivity. And we're also joined by our very good friend in Milan from Inter supporters on YouTube, Mr. Fulvio Santucci.
Hi Nima, hi all. Long time since the last time I've been here. I suppose I picked the right week to come back, but it was not on purpose. I accepted the invitation before the derby, and Nima can confirm that.
That is true. That is true. We're just happy to have you here. And we're also joined by a very special guest. He's been on the show before. He works for ESPN as an analyst. He's played for the US men's national team. Welcome back, Mr. Janusz Michallik.
Hello, everybody. I'm here for punishment, I suppose, and to defend, the name of Milan, the greatest team in that city. Sorry, guys.
I know. I remember when I interviewed you, and when I asked you to come on, and you said, I thought it was really brave of you to accept before the derby, because I know, like when we've been talking on Twitter and also exchanging privately, that you've been kind of waiting for Milan to drop off. Because in your opinion, from what you said, from what I've gathered at least, is that you felt that Milan have been overperforming a little bit. I'm keen to, I want to start on that point, because personally I've not agreed with you 100%, because I think that if you overperform, you can only do so for such a long time. This has been 13 months of where Milan have, I think they were at least not the best team in the calendar year in terms of points in the Serie A. They were top two. Now we're seeing that regression to the mean almost. How much do you think that is the quality of the team, and how much do you think it is that Pioli's tactics have been read by the opposing coaches?
Well, there's a lot to unpack in this one, because although I agree with you, I made that comment. A lot of Milan supporters weren't happy with me. And it's not that I didn't want to give Milan credit for it, because, of course, if you're in the position that Milan have been for such a long time, you've got to do something right. But it's also good to recognize that everybody else at the time have been dropping off as well, right? And I think momentum is a wonderful thing as well. But, it's funny because, we make these, you go on and make this claim, and I can only fall back on the fact that I've played once, played against Milan, played against Fiorentina, played against some great Italian teams, and I still never really understood what is it that Stefano Pioli is doing that is so great. Again, don't want to take any credit away from him, but this was just one of the games where I just felt, okay, here's a team with an identity. Which was Inter. Not always, perfect, obviously, right? But clear identity. I knew what they were going to do. I knew their strengths and weaknesses. Whereas Milan, it always gave me an impression that it's still a massive project that simply, was taking advantage of their good fortune of everybody else, winning games when they're supposed to be winning, showing good character and mentality in games that in the past they would have lost. But I just don't get the essence yet of that team. So it was normal that this was going to drop off at some stage. I hope it's not a big drop off right now. It's enough to build on it, stay in the top four and be in the Champions League. I hope I explained that well, because, it's funny when you criticize your own team because everyone jumps on you. But, I mean, was that a shocking performance? No. To me, I think these moments were always going to come. And that's not necessarily a negative, but I still think that to a degree, I mean, Milan are punching above their weight. I mean, it's simple.
No, I understand exactly what you mean. I mean, if we focus a little bit more on the derby yesterday, personally, I'm of the opinion that this game, that the way it ended was not representative of the game as a whole, because especially in the beginning of the second half. Milan really hurt Inter and really pressured Inter, and if it wasn't for 3 magical saves by Handanovic, this game could have ended completely differently. How did you? What are your thoughts on that, on the derby, and what do you take away from it?
Well, what I took away from it is again, I mean, this was always going to be the game of matchups, right? And I knew that, the width of Inter was always going to be a problem, because it was going to cause problems, not just in the wide areas, but it's going to cause problems inside, right? Which we saw throughout the game. And I take your point that in the beginning of the second half, obviously Handanovic, amazing against Zlatan Ibrahimovic, those 2 chances. And then even right after that, there was a kind of decent strike from Tonali, if you remember, from distance that probably looked, I mean, Handanovic made that save. He's got to make that save, I suppose. But it was a good spell that could have turned the game. But it didn't. And even if it did, you still don't know, because I think Milan, Inter, in terms of those matchups, I thought were just better everywhere. And that's why sometimes I'm a little bit, cool on Milan in a sense, is that when I look at the team as a whole, right? I mean, this is not a team of exceptional players. It's a good character, good collection of players, but when it comes to games like this, you need those difference makers. What were the matchups, right? Obviously, Hakimi against Theo. Theo, in my opinion, and that's something it's a bonus for him, by the way, in a way, but something that has to change, and I hope you guys agree and interject if you don't, is that Theo, for me, is 50% of Milan's attack, if not more. That's a positive and a massive negative. Because in that battle against Hakimi, I play left back, nowhere as good as Theo, I suppose, but I've played in that position, and it's territorial. You've got to win your battle there. It's a question between 2 attacking fullbacks, right? Or one was a wing back, but you know what I mean. Who's going to defend whom? That's a big question. And I think for the large periods of time, I think that Hakimi did a better job. Not to say that Theo wasn't able to get forward. He did, but when he defends, and we've seen those matches today where Milan are at their best, I mean, defensively, he's insufficient sometimes. So that's one battle lost, right? You can say Zlatan against, next battle is Zlatan against Lukaku. Zlatan had those looks, didn't take advantage of them. We've seen what Lukaku did. And by the way, I would have said that Lukaku was the best player for me, even if he didn't score that goal, because the way he contributed in a couple of those goals was amazing. I mean, the cross itself, fair play. You guys, I'm sure, remember very well that 3rd goal, right? I mean, to hold that play there, to get Hakimi into it, to continue that movement, which was, by the way, very good from Inter, was very good, right? So that's lost. Obviously, Lukaku and Zlatan, not much in between them if you look for the goals, right? But I could have told you before the game, and that's often, and Inter doesn't always win those battles, but in the center of the pitch, you've got to match the 3. I didn't think that Pioli was going to change the system, although I wouldn't mind if from time to time he did. But even if Ismail Benasser was available, I still think the way Inter are playing right now, that's a losing battle. I mean, there was nothing there between Eriksen, Brozovic, and Barella. There was nothing that Kessie could have done or did, right? I mean, he was fighting, give him credit for that. Tonali, too young, too inexperienced, no reason to jump on him, but it was always going to be difficult. So just about every match, and there's another matchup that isn't a matchup, right? Because if you add Lautaro Martinez to it, Milan has no answer to that. There isn't a player that could match him up, right, in a way, to do similar things. And Milan does not have the sort of partnership that Lautaro Martinez and Lukaku have. And of course, both of them were significant in that game. So I suppose Milan as a whole, I like what they do. I like the direction, but I don't think they have enough difference makers in that team, even if they're at their best. And we have to, again, and I'll finish quickly here. You know, if you look at Selmakers, I think he's a good functional team player, but I just don't think that he can do what some of the Inter players or other players in the league can do. Hakan Çalhanoğlu, although he's had a wonderful season, obviously he's coming from injuries, and I don't want to make an excuse, but he wasn't anywhere near, a couple months ago. Rebic struggled in this game. Calabria, whom I like, I mean, obviously he didn't have continuity of play as of late. And Simon Kjaer picked probably the worst time to have a bad game because he's been wonderful for Milan. And then Romagnoli, right? I mean, at least I've had issues with him in the past, and I'm being careful because he's a young player. But I've never been a big fan of Romagnoli. But then again against Lukaku in that sort of form, one-on-one, my goodness. So hopefully I unpacked that just a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you on Romagnoli. I've never seen the greatness. I remember when I saw him at Roma, and I've never seen it. To me, it's like you said, a functional, decent, good player, but he's not even amongst the 5 best Italian central defenders. I'm going to hand you over to Mo. Did you have a question for Janusz?
Well, I have 2 questions. One from me and another from our co-panelist Michael Gallo from Canada. Who wanted to ask you, and he said that you would know what he means. What did you think of Zielinski's goal versus Atalanta?
Well, it's good. I mean, it's about time that he starts playing a little bit. He's been struggling touch, hasn't he? But then again, so has Napoli, right? And sometimes it's a function of that. And, Gattuso under fire, of course, you look at the results and, scored a goal. But in the end, it's 4-2. And obviously, he's been good for Gattuso, and Gattuso has been very good to him, quite frankly, because he's been giving him, so many chances. He usually picks himself in the starting 11. So from a perspective of Napoli, it's good. From the Polish national team, of course, ahead of the World Cup qualifying and European Championship, it's also good. But, he's nowhere near his best. And it's funny because, we talk about injuries, we talk about COVID, and, we look at people that have COVID and recover quickly, but we don't truly know what it takes to recover. He has certainly paid the price because his case, we just think that players will just, now he's tested positive and everybody kind of walks back into what they were before. And most of the time we see that, but a lot of times we really don't know this disease, right? How it affects people, individual players all over the world and individual people. And he's been suffering ever since he had COVID. And I think people know that. It's more than just being, not playing well because. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to ask you my question then about more back to our topic of the derby and so on. And I don't want to be prompting some doom and gloom on my part, but we Interisti, we know Pioli quite well. We look back at him very fondly. The man is an extremely affable, likable, decent, hard-working manager, and it seems that he does improve from every posting he does. Whether it was Napoli, Lazio, Inter, so on and so forth. So he does progress, but there is one thing that I've always felt that he's a very sensitive man, and the whole Padre Pioli joke, etc. He's a very temperamental, sensitive person. And when Inter's results started dipping in the February of the year he was managing, the wheels came off the project completely, despite him having a pretty decent squad at the time. Is there a fear? Do you fear for this Milan project? Because I can't help but do, because I love the fact that Milan are strong, and I think the Serie A for sure needs the two Milanese teams to be strong and competitive and everything. And I can say this now because we're ahead, and it's easy to say when you're on top, of course. But do you fear for this project now, or do you think that part of the Pioli evolution and growth is his ability to withstand these tough patches that are inevitably going to face any team on any run?
Well, two stages to that. Again, I mean, I'm full of awe what he's done with his team, right? I mean, nobody has seen this. If you're Inter fan or
agreed, 100%.
Because you look at this team as individuals and you say, okay, it's an okay team, right? So I want to give him all the credit. And I think he has almost done his job. Now, obviously, this is kind of difficult after Derby, especially with Roma coming around the corner, right? Because you're looking for a reaction, but Roma kind of all of us don't really know how they're doing it, but they're doing it, right? And we keep asking those questions week in and week out, and Roma finds a way. So, I mean, they're certainly there. And for Milan, the number one priority has always been to get to the top four. But you know how it is, right? The managing of expectation is difficult, especially for pundits, but most importantly for fans, right? Because when you get to a point like Milan were ahead of the Derby when you're first, well, why not talk about the Scudetto? Why not? Even though, you recognize where the team is, you look at the other teams, you look at the situation. Absolutely. If you're in that position, I never understood people and managers saying, no, I mean, I obviously I cover Premier League as well, and I see Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and I get it why he goes out there and, when asked, yeah, we're not ready. And that's probably true. In fact, it is true. But I still wouldn't say that, because at that moment I'd say, look, we've come a long way. I think I'm very proud of my players, because whatever Pioli has done, I think he's done the hardest part imaginable for a player or manager, is to create a unit, create a team. Because, I'm not inside of that dressing room, but I can promise you that this is a well-functioning team, because you don't get to where Milan were, to where they are with this particular team and at this particular time, if there is no spirit, if there's no belief, if there isn't an understanding of what everybody has to do. I hope you understand what I mean. Because players are smart. If you don't think you're good enough, players know. They, of course, won't say that, but it'll be reflected in results at times. You know what I mean? When the times get tougher. So I think he's done a tremendous job. But the next step is where maybe you say to yourself, and next step, I mean, okay, what he has to do, he says, got to obviously keep Milan in the top four. Then we'll see what happens. And, in terms of what sort of players he brings and how he evolves this team, not just the team itself, but also how he evolves himself, right? Because, even watching at this game, and I know it's easier said than done, but I think you guys watch Milan. I certainly watch Milan's every game. But, I mean, I saw trouble before, and then I see, that high line against Inter, right? When you have Calabria, Kjaer, Romagnoli, and Theo Hernandez against a team that, I don't know what you guys say, is clearly set up to counter. Clearly, the Inter for me is a counter-attacking team. Doesn't mean that, obviously when they play against more teams, they can possess, they have to solve. But this is a team, and this is a Conte mentality that he recognizes what he has, the drive. He recognizes the strength of Lukaku, right? So knowing that, of course, I just, it was such a high line. But, the makeup of that defense is, you always know you're going to be struggling. There's not one player with pace there. Not one. Theo, okay, but it's still not blinding. So that evolution comes through maybe understanding that sometimes you have to change. Sometimes you have to send a different message to the players. And sometimes that can only be done through the transfer market, of course, right? But that's the second part. So do I think that Pioli is the man that's going to bring the Scudetto to Milan? I'm not 100% sure. But he may very well be, already is at the moment, the sort of manager that's given Milan hope, right? I mean, he's doing the hard work right now, and for that you have to appreciate him.
For sure. Will, did you have a question for Janusz?
I did, yeah. That was when you were talking about purely doing the hard work there. It reminded me of Spalletti and how he was doing the hard yards to get us into our position. But anyway, that wasn't my question. My question was more about Inter themselves going forward. Obviously, after that win yesterday, most people today and last night have kind of penciled them in as the big favourites. You've got journalists saying they're going to run away with it. You've got everyone pointing out the fact they don't play in Europe, so therefore it's going to be hard to catch them. But anyone who's followed Inter for 10 minutes is very well aware that this is not going to be plain sailing between now and the end of the season, even if the fixture list does ease up a bit. So I was wondering, Janusz, what do you think is the biggest obstacle between Inter now, as we record this, and winning the title for the first time in 11 years? I mean, could it be injuries or Juventus finding form again, to doing a run like the one we had in November and December? Could it be mental fragility, getting a bit scared as they get close to the finish line, or maybe the off-field problems which aren't going away? I'm wondering, do you see a big red warning light ahead?
No, I don't. The only obstacle is Inter themselves. And I think if you Conte, if you Inter supporter, you can't be afraid to say that, right? If not now, when? I mean, Conte is a winner, right? The mental fragility shouldn't be an issue. He's the one that can certainly work on that, right? I mean, he's got the mental strength to go through that. I think, what's the point of bringing Conte if now? I mean, if you don't do it now, when are you going to do it, right? I mean, Juventus aren't always going to get only better, right? I mean, they have they have everything, to their disposal to make it better. If the manager's not good enough, they're going to get rid of him. They can afford to buy players to change that. This season, obviously, they're paying the price of, maybe what everybody else is paying the price for. I mean, a great run, right? I mean, 9 Scudetti, right? I think it's 9. Whatever, a number of them in a row. We see what's happening with Liverpool. We see what happened with Barcelona, Real Madrid. These times come. You have an inexperienced manager that perhaps is still learning on the job and struggling a little bit. And right now, I look at that team and I don't see it how they can manage that. So Inter here. Look, I mean, knock on wood for you guys, right? I mean, if injuries come and you lose Lukaku and you lose Lautaro Martinez for long periods of time, of course that's going to change things, right? But, that can happen to everybody and you have to play through it. I mean, again, another one of the great things that Milan has done, right? I mean, when Ibrahimovic was gone, I mean, Milan functioned well. And I think everybody worried. So if you have a well-functioning team that understands, I think you can change that. I mean, look at Inter. I mean, look what he's done. People are saying, "Oh, this is a reinvention." Look at Perisic. Look at this, that, or there. I mean, he couldn't wait to get rid of Perisic, right? Conte. Yeah. I mean, he couldn't get rid of him because he couldn't play as a wing back because he doesn't defend. So you got rid of him to Bayern Munich, where of course they play 4-2-3-1. He functioned well, played tremendously, was a big part of that great team, and now he's back. When he was back, he didn't play. Now he's playing great. Now I don't necessarily think that Conte has absolutely convinced him to play better defensively. I don't know, because I was thinking about that, and you guys watched him a little bit closer game in and game out, but I don't necessarily see a massive difference in terms of what Perisic does defensively to what he did before, where Conte didn't like him as much, right? Eriksen, what has changed? I think is just, sometimes, I mean, he was as good as gone just a couple months ago. Yeah. And now all of a sudden he comes into a midfield and maybe it's a different message from Conte. Maybe just said, listen, forget about everything that happened before. Yeah, I didn't really like the way you played. Yes, I didn't really think that you fit in, but I'm going to give you a chance, a legitimate chance. And maybe Eriksen takes advantage of that because I don't see what else has changed. So just to close this down, Inter has to win that. I mean, what kind of season would that be if they don't? But this is a massive boost right now. I mean, a win like that in a derby is huge. You see Juventus struggling a little bit. Atalanta, hot and cold from time to time. Roma is the one unknown simply because I don't know if we're giving him enough credit.
No, Roma are a bit up and down. There is I think we said on this part, I think it was Will who said they're the new Inter in terms of the Pazza stuff that they've gone through the past, say, 3-4 months. I mean, their January was literally insane, not just on the pitch but off it. I'm just gonna hand you over to Fulvio. Did you have a question for Janusz, Fulvio?
Yes, I would like to come back to AC Milan. I think it's very interesting to dig into the change that this team is having right now. And let's talk a bit about physical condition, because I think it's one of the key of this game. So I had the impression that Pioli yesterday made a mistake very similar to the one that Gattuso made in a derby 2 years ago. You surely remember about that, 3-2. This mistake was probably to overrate the physical condition of this team by, giving this very intense aggression since the beginning of the game, but not so organized. So leave the one-on-one everywhere on the pitch, and each and every single player to cover like 10, 15 square meters on the pitch. So it requires a lot of stamina, requires a lot of effort. So I would like to ask you, is it possible that Pioli overrates the physical condition of this team based on the fact that against Spezia, it was clear that was deteriorating, and of course Milan has played also in Europa League 4 days before. And the second question is, if you put in comparison the game from October, the first derby of the season, do you think that it is more the improvement of the physical condition for Inter, or is it more the deterioration of the physical condition for Milan?
Well, in terms of the physical, we obviously know what Conte is about, and that's certainly a strength. That doesn't mean that it's a weakness of Pioli, because I think his game, of course, is based on the possession, right? More so than I think Inter. That's quite clear, right? And of course, you can suffer not having possession. And if everything works the way Pioli likes, I suppose, then you end up chasing from side to side or shadowing, and, you spend a lot of time without the ball. And I don't think that's a problem for Conte in particular or Inter. But as I've said, I think the high line was a little bit of a problem, because you're quite right in saying that there was the isolation one-on-one, you could almost see it from the beginning, right? And it's almost a little bit where you recognize the weak link or weak links and have a go at it. So, when you say physical conditioning, who am I to say if those, I'm understanding that you mean in terms of fitness between the two sides. Is that what you're asking me? General fitness?
Yes.
Fitness, yeah. Well, it's very difficult to say, right? Because yesterday it was clear that it wasn't the case. But I don't necessarily, think that, that's that. I mean, just from memory, they've had issues, as I've mentioned, perhaps even more so than Inter in terms of injuries and COVID. I could be wrong here, but it seems that way. That Milan, to me, has never had continuity of a lineup, really, or it doesn't seem that way. And somebody can correct me, but it almost feels like every game there are some big issues. If it's not COVID, it's injury, and so that could be a problem for him. But I think, though, that's where I would give Pioli credit, because he's had significant players out of the lineup for long periods of time, and the levels didn't drop off necessarily. Now, could there be some sort of a physical or mental fatigue? I think absolutely. This is a difficult season, and it's all about timing, isn't it, right? When do you have that bad spell? And, you could clearly see against Spezia, that was a team that was suffering, and sometimes, then you have, Inter and a derby, and you kind of get yourself up for that game, but you can't hide certain aspects if you're not at 100%. As a player, you'll never say that to the coach, although these days, I think they can find out without you, right? There's a way of measuring where you stand, but, what are you going to do, right? You have to play. So if you just ask me if Milan suffered physically against Inter yesterday, the answer is clear, yes. The second part, I'm sorry, I forgot.
No problem. I was asking you if you put in comparison the first derby of the season, if you think about the derby in October, you surely remember that there was a physical condition better for AC Milan in that case. So I would like to ask you about this. So, given the game of yesterday, do you think that it's more the improvement of Inter in terms of fitness, or it's more the deterioration of the fitness of AC Milan in comparison of that game from October?
I think it's always a little bit of both, isn't it? Right? I mean, it's early in the season. Milan still were, obviously on that high from that season before. They had this great run where you go on it a little bit. I mean, Inter obviously didn't look right. And, part of it was, of course, the pressure of all the other competitions, right, for Inter as well. So, I mean, there's a little bit of freedom of mind right now. The one thing that you guys talk about, and even people that don't follow Serie A probably have heard of what Antonio Conte is capable of doing if you give him a week of training, right? And that doesn't go just physically, but tactically and mentally and preparation-wise as well. So there's no doubt that Inter would benefit from that, because the one thing around the world right now that managers complain about is that they really have no time to train. The games are being played every 2 or 3 days, so it's hard to even address issues tactically, never mind physically. And people will say, well, what, physically you're already tired. What do you need more training for? And as a former player, yeah, I'd much rather play than train. But there's ways of bringing players around, and there's recognitions of who may need, maybe a little extra work. And there's some players that actually are working very, very hard where you have to hold them back just a little bit. So comparing early season physical form to this now, it's a bit difficult. And, Milan did have to play, if you remember, in Europa League. That was also a disappointing result, wasn't it, right? And if you remember physically, I think that was taxing. Watching that game, it was just wide open in transition against the Red Star, right? I mean, defending was optional, which is not a great preparation for a derby. And you combine that with Spezia, yeah, I think physically probably there was a big difference, not just between, that first derby and this one, but even in between, games leading up to it. But in the end, it's just the individual battles there, as I mentioned, in the center of the pitch, in wide areas. You can almost always say that the key players, for example, I mean, Donnarumma is wonderful. I don't blame him for all the goals, right? But if you wanted to make a matchup between Handanovic and Donnarumma, there's always that one time in the game where you ask your goalkeeper to come up with something special, right? And this is nothing against Donnarumma, but he didn't, and Handanovic did.
But that hasn't really been the case this season. I think Donnarumma has shown, in my opinion at least, that
I said it's not enough, but we have to look at this game. This is the derby, the massive game in isolation. So I'm looking at isolation. I'm looking Teo against Hakimi. Okay. I'm looking the 3 midfielders, of Inter against Tonali and Kessie. I'm looking Zlatan versus Lukaku. Yeah. And, again, I don't want to make a controversy here because Donnarumma wasn't at fault of anything. No. But sometimes it's that, look what Handanovic did, right? Against Donnarumma, who's been, you can argue the best in the world this season. You could make that argument. Certainly very easily top 3 in the world.
For sure. Well, before we let you go, I just want to ask you to give us who do you think will win the Serie A, like your top 4?
You're going to make me look at the table now and the differences. Inter has to win this. I mean, this is, this, in my opinion, this would be a massive failure now. It really would be. And there would be no excuse. I mean, you could make something up, but the way Juventus are playing right now, Milan's still in it, by the way. I just want to say that it's only 4 points. Yeah, it's a lost derby, but it's if there's any team that's closest, and if it can recover from that and get better, it's Milan more than anybody else, right? I mean, I can't find the table now. You guys are going to have to tell me. It was
Yeah.
Roma's third, aren't they? But I can't remember the
Yeah,
differences.
but to be honest, the Juve are winning right now as we're recording this. They're third on 45 points because they're playing Crotone and they've got a game in hand against Napoli. So it's
Right.
Inter 53, Milan 49, Juventus 45 on 22 games, and then Roma 44, Atalanta 43, Lazio 43, and Napoli on 40.
I'd have to look at the fixtures, but I think you will see, of course, Inter in the top three. You'll see Juventus in the top three. My little bias will say that Milan will be there. I very much like Lazio, but there's some issues with Lazio, right? And the COVID, all of that. I want to be careful here because we really don't know what's going to happen with that, right?
Yeah.
It seems to me like a massive investigation here, and I don't know what the implication of that may be, but I do like Lazio. If they're at their best, it's a difficult team. So I'm going to give you 3. I'm going to stay with 4 because, again, I like to see, I'd like to see Atalanta there again, but I think, their minds are divided. We'll see what happens against Real Madrid here. The deeper they go, the more trouble they're going to have, I have a feeling, in Serie A.
Agreed. Thank you so very much for coming on. And before we let you go, Janusz, do you have something coming out that you want to plug, social media, whatever? Then the floor is yours.
I'm good. Probably you guys see the ESPN FC, some of the digital work that we do that you can see all over the world. And on Twitter, I spout some nonsense from time to time. And every once in a while, I come up with something good that you all like. But you know how it is on Twitter. It's nearly impossible. So
it's a digital sewer, and I have to say you're one of the few bright lights in there. I've always enjoyed having discussing with you about the game. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for the questions. Congratulations on the big win, because I know it means a lot to you. I wish I was here, maybe a little more sarcastic and happy and. But that's okay. Milan are where they are. They're doing a great job, and if they make a top 4, this will be at least the first step for Milan to maybe start building towards Milan that's truly fighting for Scudettos and bigger trophies. And I think all of it will be good for Serie A, wouldn't it? Right? If you have
absolutely,
Inter and Milan and Juve playing a big role in the European and world football, I think that's all positives. Seeing what Atalanta's doing, aren't they great ambassadors for your football? It's amazing, and I kind of can't wait for this Real Madrid game, especially with Real Madrid, what it looks like missing half of their team, but who cares, right?
Yeah, as a Simone Inzaghi aficionado, I'm looking forward to Lazio Bayern Munich. I'm really excited for that.
I really like Lazio. I do. I like the way they play. I really enjoy it.
Me too. Thank you so much for coming on, Janusz.
Thank you, guys.
And take care. Thank you. Bye. Right, that was Janusz Michallik of ESPN FC, and let's move on to our own. Let's talk ourselves a little bit about and unpack the game. I think that this was a game where Inter obviously won deservedly, and a game that Inter handled really well. But I'm keen to hear what you guys think, because for me, the decisive moment in that game was Handanovic's 200 seconds, which Fabrizio Biasin, journalist, so eloquently said that he did more in those 200 seconds than he's done all season. But it's if Inter are to win this Scudetto, he has to be that good. He has to be that decisive in those situations. And again, last week I was speaking about the episodes, or episodi as the Italians say, and they all broke in Inter's favor, and they did it again this week. And not to take anything away from Inter or Milan, it's just that's how the cookie crumbled. Handanovic came up with 3 absolutely fantastic saves. The first one was the most brilliant one, and Inter went on to win this game. I think the 3-0 scoreline, or the second part of that half of the second half, was a little bit. The game was over after 2-0 virtually. But I'm keen to hear what you think, Mo. Do you think it was that kind of a blowout win that it kind of came off as towards the end, or are you a little bit more careful and cautious?
Tough question. Look, I think the scoreline definitely flatters Inter a bit, but it's absolutely and totally deserved at the same time. I disagree that I think that Handanovic's interventions were crucial, of course, but I also think that this match would have ended with an Inter victory even if Milan had equalized, because overall Inter were a better team, and it just would have made the job a bit tougher. Maybe it wouldn't have been as emphatic of a result at the end without these interventions. But I genuinely do believe, seeing how the first half had gone, that Inter were in total control of this match, even more so than they had been against Lazio the week before. And we spoke about how it was a totally controlled performance, despite the commentators, the international commentators' best efforts to make it seem like Inter were undeserved winners of that game. So while I agree that a 3-0, sometimes you play really well and you lose 3-0 and it sucks. But Milan didn't play very well. I mean, they didn't play deserving of a 3-0. But at the same time, Inter did deserve everything they got here. It wasn't like the goals were scored against the run of play. It wasn't like Milan were peppering Handanovic and he was making save after save and last-ditch effort after last-ditch effort by the three centre-backs or whatever. There was none of that. There was none of that, barring those few minutes in the beginning of the second half, and those, albeit arriving from a contentious corner saves anyway that had to have been made. So again, a very long-winded answer, a long-winded way of saying, I think Inter are definite 3-0 deserved winners, but Milan maybe aren't deserving of a 3-0 loss, but they were deserved losers all in all.
Oh, for sure. Fulvio, I want to hear your thoughts on this game, because there's so much I want to unpack, especially the Ivan Perisic, because I personally have the opinion that I think Conte has changed the tactics to suit both, not just Perisic, but the team as a whole, such as Milan Skriniar, such as Christian Eriksen. He's lowered the defensive line of the team between 3 to 5 meters on the pitch, which has basically made everything click and tick, in the sense that now when Perisic gets the ball, he doesn't have to work as hard to be in sync with his other teammates. Same thing with Skriniar, who we know has always struggled with lateral movements because he's not very quick. But he's got a great read of the game, and if he can work forwards instead of backwards, he's almost unstoppable. Christian Eriksen, I think, as well, in a way, in the sense that the way that teams have pushed forward and try to press Brozovic to nullify Inter, this in turn has managed to create up space for Christian Eriksen to sit almost like a quarterback and create play and dictate play. This is these are the positive things that Conte has done. But in those 10 minutes where Milan were completely overpowering Inter, that worried me a little bit moving forward. I'm keen to hear what you think, how you experienced these dynamics in the game, and what I've mentioned about that second half period where Milan dominated.
Nima, all you say is correct. I think that that period of time depends a bit more on Christian Eriksen, but not because of him. I think that this team has got used to play with a midfield with a lot of muscles and a lot of aggressive people on going at the ball. And I recognized something similar against Lazio as well last week when Inter was up 2-0. Lazio have had a comeback, probably a little bit more consistent and a little less dangerous than the Milan one, but basically the same. I noticed that Inter was not able to keep the ball when it was into our tre quarti, and that depends from the midfielder. So basically, Conte played one of the most important games of the season. I think we can all recognize that. And he played in a different way. He played with 2 playmakers, let's call it like that. So Brozovic, by the way, is the unsung hero of this derby, because he played a great match, but was in the shadows of the other guys, and Eriksen as well. So you're going to earn something in terms of how to adjust the team and the individual strength and skills, like you said, Perisic, Skriniar, but you lost something in terms of defense, in terms of being solid, having a solid defense that lasts 90 minutes. So I think that this was the case, and this was the reason because Milan came back into the game, or at least tried to come back into the game. Even though we're talking about, we say Milan, but we're talking about Zlatan basically, because the chances was practically a rabbit in the hat, kept just put from Zlatan. But it's like that, and I think that Inter is not perfect. It's improved a lot since the experiment of the beginning of the season, but it's not still perfect. And I think the reason is because of this new role of Eriksen that still need to be perfection. Like Lazio, my impression of the first substitution to make, it was the same that I had against Lazio. So put out Eriksen now, because we are now
exactly
in a position of advantage, right? And we see that our opponents are having a comeback, and we need something different than Eriksen.
Exactly.
There. So it was against Lazio was on Milinkovic-Savic, and against Milan was basically against KC that was a little bit up in the position, but also Tonali, also Çalhanoğlu. All these guys need a better defense, needs a better a better positioning into the defensive stuff that the team need to make. So I think that this change, the fact that Eriksen now fits into the offensive play is a benefit for Inter, because it's a benefit for a lot of players into Inter, and we keep scoring a lot of goals. But the other side of the coin is that you lose something into the defense, and at some point you need to change, and that's basically the difference that is between Eriksen and Vidal. That was basically the replacement of this new team.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Will, I wanna hand over to you, and I want to hear your thoughts going into this, because I always quote you on this about how you say that Conte's football is like a marching band, and when it all works, it really sounds well. And it's been working. It's been every single musician and every single instrument has been tuned in. What are your impressions of this game?
Well, I think the trumpets and the violins and the saxophones were all out in full force for that second goal, because you had 9 players out of 11 involved in that move for the second goal. Only Brozovic and Bastoni were not involved, and that's probably the best team goal we've scored under Conte, or at least this season. So yeah, I think that just tells you what kind of form the team was in, and it's a goal like that makes me agree with Mo on the thing about Milan, because yeah, it was obviously a key moment when Handanovic made those saves, but I think we might well have gone on to win that game anyway, because the performance had been so convincing up until that point, especially going forward. But I mean, we'll never know. But yeah, it was a fantastic performance, and as we've seen so often under Conte, when we score an early goal, everything gets easier, because then we can play our game. And the second 2 goals, although they were very different, they were fundamentally counterattacks. Very good counterattacks. One from Lukaku on his own, and one from the rest of the team. But they're all about attacking open space. And if we'd gone behind and Lautaro hadn't taken his chance after 5 minutes, as he often hasn't this season, then things might have turned out very differently. But it was a complete performance. I agree. I was just so impressed that this team has made a real jump in terms of their mental approach to these big games, because it wasn't long ago that we were talking about giving up a lead against Lazio and against Atalanta and against Roma because we'd sat too deep, or because Conte had taken off Lautaro and put on Gagliardini or things like this. And now you trust this team to go and deliver in these matches, and I think this was possibly even more dominant than the game against Lazio. I don't know. It's close. We could probably debate it, but I felt like the difference in the levels of performance was bigger, because I thought Lazio played quite well, even though they didn't create match. Whereas Milan, I don't think really were at the races, at least not in the way they have been for most of this season.
No.
But there's so many positives. I mean, you've got one goal conceded in 6 now in the league, which is remarkable. And that was a deflected free kick, which is night and day compared to where we were at the start of the season. The defenders are all benefiting, as you said, from this slight tweak. There was an article in Gazzetta today that was basically explaining what you just said, in that Inter are winning all their games with less possession than they had at the start of the season, because Conte has gone back to type and done what pick the right suit for this body, if you like. Some
God,
more
I love that.
some
God,
more
I love
sartorial work.
God, I love that.
Yeah, but I mean, as you said, Handanovic was fantastic. I mean, to be fair, it's the third big game in which he's made a big save, because he had a save against Juventus and he saved us against Napoli as well, and we certainly deserved to win a lot less than this match. So I mean, those performances are starting to add up, despite all the doubts that we have over him. You've covered Perisic and Eriksen. There's nothing really negative. I thought it was fantastic, and it now feels like I mean, there's no doubt it is ours to lose now.
You see, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I wanted to talk briefly about. I don't like this talk that it's Inter's title to lose, because that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And
it's true. It doesn't matter if you don't like it. It's true.
No, it's not true, because it's only 4 points and there's 15 matches left to play. That the 4 points in 15 matches can wane really easily. I'll tell you when. I know Mo has said since the beginning of the season that Inter are going to win the Scudetto, and I've absolutely not agreed with that. Let me put it to you this way. I will not only say that I think Inter will win the Scudetto, I think Inter will win comfortably if Inter go out after the game against Atalanta with a minimum of 7 points to whoever's in second, then yes, Inter will win. Anything less than that, this thing is going to the wire. You have to remember, Inter have Roma, Napoli, and Juve away. No, not Roma, but the rest of them away to play. And that's that. I don't want to be within 4 points of traveling to Allianz Stadium, and I have I think Fulvio and Mo understand what I'm talking. I'm scarred emotionally from seasons past. Okay, it's
it's more than acknowledged, Nima, and it's totally understandable. But you need to calculate into the anticipation that Inter so far has underperformed into the whole season. Right, so the struggles that we used to see on the second part of the season came in the first part of the season, and yet we are here talking about our first place, talking about the top of the table, and it's late February, and we basically have this advantage on AC Milan, and AC Milan is not a team that has shown to have the consistency and the attitude probably to go and win the Scudetto. Probably not the roster depth to go into do that, especially because they play in Europe. And do not underestimate the advantage that Inter has to not playing in Europe while the other are. So I think that once again on this perspective, we need to look very close to Juventus. I don't believe what Juventus is doing in the last month, but I believe that when Juventus is going to wake up, could be too late, and this is up to us. This is up to Inter. So basically, it's all in our hands, which is not the perfect situation. We're talking about Inter, and we can recognize that, but it's really in our hands. And by the way, I mean, home away without the crowd into the stadium is probably not so big issue. To be honest,
this is the traveling to Torino and that stadium, and we saw what happened by Italia, the cameras and the provocations, and Bonucci of all people going. Do you know what I mean? Like, we know their gobby tactics. Let's be
of course. Of course, it's not a happy story to have Juventus on the not the last game, but when you have to games. It's not a happy story. All right, I would like to go there with a Scudetto already in hand. Yes. That would be nice, of course.
Guard of honor.
But I think that if Inter wants to win the Scudetto, it needs to win the Scudetto in this month, so March.
Exactly.
Otherwise it would be difficult, and then there would be psychological implication if you're going to play these big matches with little advantage. Let's see, but Nima, I always told you to trust this team, right? Because I knew the potential back in November, back in December. I sure to trust this team, and this is what we see right now is what I'm talking about. So I think this team can be trusted for what they did into the last 3 months, except for the elimination from the Champions League, which was built on the first 2 months of the season and not in the game against Shakhtar. But I mean, I can trust this team for what they did into the middle of the season, and I would like to trust this team for what they do in the next months. Like Conte said, the two worrying games now are Genoa and Parma, because the Inter now seems to have the opposite issue that had once. So underestimate the little matches while putting the maximum effort into the big matches, right? This is a mistake that could not happen because the little matches into the Serie A are more than the big matches.
Absolutely.
So that's practically the key.
Absolutely, 100%. And you see, I agree with you on all of that. It's this month. That's why I said after Atalanta game, Genoa, Parma, Atalanta, and then I think it's Sassuolo, if I'm not mistaken. It's
yes. Correct.
Yeah. No, it's Torino. It's Torino away, and then Sassuolo, and then it's the international break. So it is now. It's going. But for me, if Inter have 7 points going in after Atalanta, then yes, then it's done. I mean, it is Inter's to lose, but I'm not quite there yet. I'm just not quite there yet.
I'm not trying to convince anyone of I'm happy. I think it works in Inter's favor that people doubt the team, and I think I understand what you said, Will, about it is a fact, and whether we like it or not, it doesn't matter. But I'm with Nima here. I don't like this talk of it's Inter's to lose. It's Inter's to lose. Not because I just no. I mean, I know, but
pressure, guys.
Yeah,
it's pressure, but it is what it is. I mean, it's true.
It's really true. I agree, but I'm not sure if I can trust this team's mentality to be able to handle that sort of pressure. I think
that's right. But this is what you need to do if you want to win the Scudetto. This is what you need to do. There's no way out on that.
I agree completely, but what I mean is, it would be. I mean, if I were to craft my perfect Scudetto winning run, I would like it to be more similar to Inter's clinching second place last season, where it sort of happened under the radar, and no one really kind of Atalanta, Napoli away, pum, and you finish second place,
exactly
1 point behind Juventus. So I agree, but so long story short, again, I'm happy when people doubt Inter. I think it works in Inter's favor. The more doubters there are, it works better because it takes the pressure off the team. But still, I think I agree with you.
Look, for me, I'm scarred from this Inter Beffa thing that
it's right, but just let me add one thing, and then I shut up forever. I'm joking, but let's put this a little bit mathematical right now, because I think that we can agree that the Scudetto can be won at a lower quota in comparison to the other year. Let's say 83 points should be enough, right? Unless another team don't make a miracle and make an incredible run of 11 or 12 winning in a row, it is like this. Inter is 53 right now, so ideally misses 30 points, right? So 30 points in 15 games are 2 points per game. That is way less than Inter is doing so far right now, with all the problems that Inter had at the beginning of the season. So it's not mission impossible, and everybody are able to recognize that, not only for what Inter is doing in the pitch, but also because they are seeing the numbers and they see that Inter is performing at a rate that is comfortable to win the Scudetto, and this cannot be hidden. Unfortunately, this cannot be hidden. So I agree with Mo. It would be better to be off the grid, to lay low now, but we simply cannot do that. Everybody knows that we are favorites for a lot of reasons. And it is what it is. And I think that this could be the chance for the team to take the pressure, handle the pressure, and finally win the pressure, because this is how you grow.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I think Fulvio, just to speak to that point as well, I think so. Two things. Again, alluding to that end of season run last year, where everybody, us included, were so wary of those tough, quote unquote, tough away matches or tough matches against Atalanta, Napoli, and the team sort of brushed them off and took all 6 points easily, and it was a non-event. I also think that run in the Europa League all the way through to the final might really have added a lot of years in terms of experience and maturity in handling that sort of pressure to the squad. So, yeah, just speaking to that point, I think you're right. We were so close last season to bringing in some genuine silverware, and it was only pressure that really defeated us. And hopefully, there's lessons learned in terms of mentality and grit that they can take forward this year, and that hopefully Scudetto winning run.
Speaking about, as we all have kind of alluded to, that begins next week, this Sunday, against Genoa at the San Siro, where without Hakimi and with Bastoni, Brozovic, and Barella still on a yellow card, and this is
Lukaku as well.
Lukaku as well. And look, this is breaking me down because I don't want to play Atalanta with them missing it. So I'm thinking, Darmian is probably going to start. I'm thinking, should he start? Should he rotate? Because Genoa have been on a fantastic run since Ballardini took over, and they shouldn't be underestimated. So I'm kind of conflicted here. What do you do here? Because I think away against Parma, I know Parma have been awful, but it's still away, and Inter at the Tardini do tend to struggle. So I'm kind of conflicted here, and I think if Inter are to beat Atalanta, they need Lukaku for sure. They need Barella for sure. So I'm a little bit conflicted here. I'm keen to hear what you think on that, Fulvio.
Well, if you ask me, I'm gonna put the best team that I have available, no matter who they are and no matter the calculation. To be completely honest, I will do like that. Besides, you are talking about Atalanta, and Atalanta has a long story of turnover. I will have some defection. It's not an issue. I mean, it's not Juventus. We play actually at least twice better than Juventus, which is arguably the best team that there is in Serie A apart from Inter. So I cannot be scared of have a defection against Atalanta. Of course, we're an aggressive team. Of course, we need to cope with the yellow card. But as soon as I got the whole team available, the best team available, I will line the best team, especially because I play once a week, so I can afford it. So I think that if you start to spare players to calculate the matches, is a wrong message to the team. Look at what Milan did. Calabria made a disqualify against Spezia to be in the derby, and Milan end up by losing both matches. So it's a wrong message for me that you give to the players.
For sure. No, that's a good shout. And also, but Genoa, people shouldn't laugh because they are a good team, and they have some, they've got some really good Serie A players, Serie A quality players, and they have Pandev there, and it would just be, I mean, if he were to end this run, it would just be so heartbreaking. Let's just quickly, I mean, there's not much more to say other than Hakimi suspended. We have Lukaku, Barella, Brozovic on a yellow card, and Bastoni who can get suspended. Vecino and Vidal are pretty much back in the squad. Stefano Sensi has suffered a muscle fatigue, as I guess that's what he does at Inter, suffers from muscle fatigue, that is, and that's just his status, that's his job. So I don't think he'll play. But just quickly before we move on, I think an comfortable, easy 2-0 win here is on the cards. Lautaro and Perisic scoring. What about you, Mo?
Yeah, I think a pretty comfortable win as well for for us. I'm not so sure about the clean sheet. I think maybe we'll let in a sneaky goal, but I think a comfortable win, multi-goal 3, so that we even widen the already remarkable, eye-watering goal difference that Inter has. Widen it even further compared to Atalanta and I believe it's Juventus. So we'll have Lukaku scoring, Lautaro scoring. He's on form, and I like Perisic because he deserves a goal. So yeah, 3-1.
Okay, William Beckman, what do you think?
I think 2-0. I think a double from Lukaku, and I agree completely with everything Fulvio said about picking your best team and taking one game at a time. So the suspensions will come when they come. As far as the general game is concerned, it's good that we've got one of them out of the way without having a block. If we could sort of spread them out one at a time or something, that would be ideal. But you can't control it. It's when you start making calculations like that you end up in the situation that you were talking about being weak and dropping points. So let's go for it. 2-0, and yeah, as you said, Ballardini is a wizard. So watch out.
Fulvio, what do you think?
I would say 3-0. And it's the same from Will. So 2 goals from the strikers, but 1 goal from another department. I don't know if midfield or defense is probably. I would like probably to Barella to score because it really deserves to score 1 goal per game in the way he plays. So let's go like that. I think 3-0. I think the real challenge on this game is to score the first goal, and after that everything gets easier. Agreed
100%.
Wow, a clean sheet, clean sweep from the non-positivities. Wow.
Right, let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something heavily in the world of football, starting with the negativity, which will be presented by Mr. Fulvio Santucci. This week's Moggi.
So, a very funny story. I'll talk back because it happens on the Italian TV. Actually, the national Italian TV, even though it was a channel for the abroad people, was called Rai Italia, and they were analyzing basically the derby, and the game was ended since half an hour or something like that. So, but basically they were there to talk about the derby. And this guy that is called Tiziano Pieri, and is a former Serie A referee. He was involved in Calciopoli as well, but then he was absolved, so there wasn't really involved. Now basically he's there to work and to give opinions and to review the episodes of the game, like penalties, what in Italy we call moviola. And at some point he brings up a very interesting news that he gave very excited about. He was very excited about that because at some point he said that Inter was jeopardizing the victory that they have achieved just minutes ago against AC Milan, because Inter made 5 changes in 4 slots, and this is not allowed from the from the regulation, right? You know that you have 5 substitution, and you need to go with 3 slots plus the half time, but you cannot go into 4 slots. And this was a sensation on the internet, very hot topic for some minutes on the internet, because everybody remember in January what happens to Roma, which line up 6 players against Spezia in Coppa Italia, and they were defeated basically for breaking the rules. And this go to a very sensational engagement for some minutes on the internet, but simply wasn't true. And everybody knows that, because everybody watched the game and watched the Inter make actually the 5 substitution into 3 and not 4 slots. And during the commercials, I think that someone has told this guy, "Hey, you're doing the wrong thing. It's not true." Basically, so he came back and said, "Hey, okay, guys, my apologies, because I got something wrong, but it's not my fault, basically, because I read from a review on the internet that Inter made a change in pro slots. So far, since it's like a frog moment, but it's actually a Moggi moment, because this guy was in a national television to talk about a specific game, and he admitted basically that he never saw the game. Although he was talking about the game, he wasn't seeing the game, and the truth is the fact that he didn't know about the chronological, the timeline of the substitution. He didn't know about that. He just read something from a live score app and reported without making any check. And be aware, this is a former referee, so he should know very well about the time to decision, the time to double check, but simply go like that. So. As I said, it's an embarrassing moment that should be a frog probably, but it's a Moggi because it reveals the states of the news and the information that we have in Italy right now. When a lot of people are commenting games, are there for commenting games that never saw at all. So that was basically the third Moggi.
I saw that and I couldn't believe it because it was so embarrassing. It's like anyone who watched the game saw that this wasn't the case, and it was really, really cringy. I saw that. It was oof. Right, let's move on to something much more comical. This week's Frog, which will be presented by Mr. William Beckman.
È clamoroso! Autogol di Ranocchia!
Yes, I would just like to first give a nod to a frog that we highlighted about a month or so ago when we talked about Cagliari and the remarkable decision to extend Eusebio Di Francesco's contract after they had lost 6 games in a row and been winless in 12. Just to give an update quickly, they've lost 3 games out of 4 since then, and today they sacked Di Francesco. So that really turned out to be one of the best coaching decisions that a Serie A club has made in recent seasons, and they look like they're going to go down unless they get themselves out of trouble. So congratulations to them. But this week's frog, I'm going to give it to Milan actually, because for this really strange and I have to say banter era Inter-esque story of Ibrahimovic and his burgeoning sort of career as a superstar singer that we're about to get in a couple of weeks' time. Because he's going to be, obviously, I'm sure you'll know this, Nima. He's going to Sanremo, this music festival, in a couple of weeks.
No, it's not this week, but the week after, from March 2nd to 6th.
No, that's what I said. It's next week.
Sorry, yeah. So no, it's March 2nd to 6th, yeah.
So he's obviously this is a very delicate moment of the season, and Milan are seemingly going to lose Ibrahimovic from their training sessions for a few days because he's going to appear every night with the stars at this music festival, and well, it just doesn't look great given that they've just lost the derby 3-0 and he seems to be a bit out of form, and he's basically they've opened themselves up to a lot of scorn, really. You know, they've had the communication of this story taken out of their own hands because it was Amadeus himself who runs Sanremo who came out and said, you know, last week that Ibra was going to be training on sort of have a special training program in Liguria because it wouldn't make sense for him to commute to and from Milan because the distances would be silly. And I liked it because it just kind of reminded me of what we had, the kind of thing that we had with, you know, it's kind of like into saying that we're going to give Icardi a personal training session because he needs to go and pick up Wanda from the Tiki Taka studios on a Monday. You know, it's really strange, and it's nice to know that, you know, other clubs can be so prosperous as well. And he's you know, this is the problem is when, you know, if you're going well, then this kind of thing disappears, but they're not in form at the moment, Milan. And so you get people like Nicola Berti in today's Gazzetta saying, why did Ibrahimovic get taken off yesterday? Does he need to go and prepare for Sanremo? And, you know, you get stuff like this that just sort of snowballs, and you have just stuff like that. And I just like that it's not us for once. Yeah. You know, we don't have the Wanda show. Any opportunity to remind everyone that the Wanda show is over is great for me. So I'll take that. And yeah, I mean, let's hope he sings. I don't know if you've heard him sing before in Sweden or anything, but
no,
I'll be looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll definitely share that. No, I find this whole situation completely bizarre that he wants to do that. And to me, it's so unlike him to risk doing something. He's always been such a model professional about, especially in this part of the season when it matters the most. To me, this suggests that he's probably going to hang up his boots at the end of the season, because him doing Eurovision stuff, pre-selection stuff, like that's just weird. That's not a person who wants to continue playing football. That's a guy looking at the end of his career.
Yeah, and I gave it to Milan because they've kind of been embarrassed by this situation. You could give it to Ibra, but
no, but he asked and they signed off on it. They could have said no.
And now they're kind of sort of hostage to this situation while they're potentially getting sucked back into a fight for the top four.
And on the top of that, you've got Stefano Pioli and the Pioli high that never lasts longer than 13 months, and we're into month 14 and we're looking at a free fall. I'm genuinely wondering what I'm genuinely wondering what the hell Massara, Gazidis and Maldini were thinking with this. You say no, you can't just give it other ones. You say no. I'm sorry. Do it next year. Like it's weird. Right, let's move on. We started off positively. Let's end positively. This week's Moratti, which we presented by Mr. Positivity, original Mr. Positivity, Mr. Mohamed Nasser.
He works a lot, he's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person of this qualities.
Yeah, another laundry list of positivity to pick from, and I'll go through my honorable mentions quickly. I honestly loved the fact that Steven Zhang made a Milano Siamo Noi tweet or Instagram post. I know social media is silly, and I know that there is a strong feeling that maybe Suning are out, but I love Suning. I like Zhang. I like Steven, So the fact that he's still supporting the team could mean something. And for sure, at least from the outside looking in, it seems like it sends the right message, at least. Let's put it that way. So there's one thing. Another thing is, of course, Lukaku's run against Romagnoli, against Parolo the week before. It's Kylian Mbappe versus Piqué-esque. Absolutely blew them out of the water. Fantastic visuals, amazing imagery. One of those moments, he seems to make those moments happen in the derbies. It's going to be an iconic image, him really blowing past Romagnoli for that third goal. Incredible. And then, of course, Handanovic, I wanted to give him the Moratti of the week because of how much stick I usually give him, and really he, like you said, Nima, it potentially could have changed the outcome of the game, but this is why he gets paid the big bucks, and he really showed why. And if this is how he's going to end the season, this is the form that he's going to end the season, or at least show up in the big games when we need those clean sheets, then I have nothing but praise. But my Moratti of the week goes to something a little bit more intangible, and that is Antonio Conte's post-match press conference. You guys, we all maybe, but people in general kind of have railed on Conte when he's given those crazy rants post matches when things haven't gone his way. And I think yesterday's post-match conference couldn't have been better. Fulvio, earlier you said you mentioned how he said that the two most important games are now Genoa and Parma, and showing that we are this is the real yardstick and measure for the team's maturity and growth and self-confidence is how we deal is how Inter deals with matches like this. So I think this in a vacuum alone is a great message to send to the players. But also the fact that the praise that he heaped on Perisic and of course on Eriksen, yet challenging them. He tells Perisic that he believes he's the best terzino in that position in the world, or could be one of the best in the world. Not only has he reinterpreted the role, he's perfect for the role. It's stuff like this that really speaks to his understanding of his squad and of his players' temperament. And maybe it's due to the fact that we couldn't buy players in the January transfer season. Maybe it's due to the fact that we couldn't offload Perisic and Eriksen. But the fact is, we didn't, and this is where we are, and this is what he's done with those facts. And so, for the actions on the pitch by Conte and the players, and then how he then communicates those actions with the press, he's got to be my Moratti for the week.
Amen. I just want to echo that because I think what he's done after Christmas and after January, the way he has, him and Moratti and the rest of them, the way they have held this ship together. I've said it like 2-3 weeks in a row on this show now, and it cannot be understated. It cannot be said enough. What they are doing is absolutely phenomenal. It's the stuff that makes you a club legend. To win a title for the first time, or to even compete for one after 11 years in these incredibly difficult circumstances is a fantastic job, and it shouldn't be underestimated what they're doing and what he's done. And for me, the most important thing that Conte has done is not just the tactical stuff, but it's to get a player like Ivan Perisic, who's won a Champions League, been in a World Cup final, Christian Eriksen, who's done all the things he's done and established himself as a top player, to get all these players to not only accept to play in this system, but to also wholeheartedly accept to try and play in a system that doesn't suit them, and to build a team around that is nothing short of phenomenal. I've always said that Antonio Conte is at his absolute best when he doesn't get exactly everything he wants. When he gets everything he wants, he's at his worst. When he's like this, when his back is against the wall, when he has to, this is what you have to work with, Antonio. That's when he produces absolute magic. And he does it time and time again. He did it at Juve, he did it at Chelsea, he did it with the Italian national team, and this season, undoubtedly with Inter. So I can't echo that enough for Conte. Right, that's all we had time for in this derby-winning, glorious episode. This week. We'll be back next week. Until then, I'd like to thank Janusz Michallik for coming on. I'd like to thank you, Mo.
Always a pleasure, guys. Always a pleasure.
Mr. Fulvio Santucci, don't be a stranger.
Never. Thank you for having me here. It was a great pleasure, like usual, as usual.
And Mr. William Beckman.
Thank you, everyone. Always a pleasure. I'm off to watch that second goal again until I fall asleep this evening on a loop for the rest of the week until our next pod, I think.
That sounds great. And until next week, I'm your host, Nima Tavallaey Ruzzari, wishing all the capoliste out there a happy week. 3 points. Stay safe, stay healthy, and sempre e solo forza Inter.